Welcome to Inspiration Inc. We have a very wonderful and inspirational person with us today who regularly keeps featuring in world's 100 most influential women's list. But more than that, her story is so inspirational that I'm sure the new generation who's watching this show will have a lot to learn from her. We have with us CMD of Biocon, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw. Ma'am, thank you so much for joining us on this show, and it's a pleasure having you on this show. First of all, let me compliment you for your bold, honest, and fearless opinion that you keep giving as one of the pillars of members of India Inc. Where you draw this fearlessness from?
I am absolutely vested in India's future and India's economic future, and therefore I find that whenever I find that that future is being sort of affected by wrong policies, I have to speak up. Today we are at a time when we are facing an economic slowdown, and that's not a good sign. I don't think we should be having an economic slowdown because I'm the eternal optimist.
Right.
I always believe that India can absolutely be a $5 trillion economy.
But if you look at the beginning of your journey, it's quite unusual. You were born and brought up in Bangalore, and obviously your father gave you advice to become a brewmaster, which was a very, I would say, not only unusual, it's completely unconventional and unheard of profession to start with in a country like India. Even today, not many people even know what exactly they do. So how did you deal with that advice and how you pursued it?
So, first and foremost, after I finished my zoology honors, and when I wanted to sort of get into a professional career, which is what I was really wanting to do,
right,
based on science, based on biosciences, my father said to me, why don't you do brewing? And I said, my God, that's not the right thing for a woman to do. And he said, look, don't look at it as a gender-based profession, because this is about fermentation science.
Correct.
And this is about microbiology. Are you interested in fermentation science? Are you interested in the fact that these technologies are very interesting because you're harnessing microbes and other sort of systems to actually produce very important products, commercially important products. So if you look at it that way, then I think you will not look at it in a gender biased way. And I thought, well, that's exciting. And then he of course told me about biotechnology and how important it's going to be in the future. And he was absolutely right.
That's
so
true.
I then looked at it in a very different way. I looked at it in a very agnostic way and said, yes, I think I should do that. And that's what I then studied in Australia, and I came back as a qualified brewmaster, and of course the first qualified woman brewmaster in India. And I thought, okay, now I'm going to basically put my knowledge to good use in being a brewmaster at one of the recognized breweries in this country. But of course that was not to be, because
exactly
what I actually feared right in the beginning came true, that none of the breweries thought that this was a job for a woman.
Correct.
And so basically everyone said, look, we'd love to hire you, you're very competent, I know we are calling you to solve our problems. So I was asked to troubleshoot for many breweries.
Correct.
People who had a contamination problem in their fermentation, or people who were not getting the right yields in their fermentation, they would ask me to come and solve their problems, and I would. But they wouldn't hire me as a full-time brewer because they said it just wasn't possible for them. And that's when I realized that yes, there was a big gender issue in our country when it came to this profession. And then it was an accidental encounter that saw me start up my own biotech company based on fermentation science.
In a garage.
In a garage, of course. Of course, that was my office.
Yeah. But, one is that you always had an option of, going back to maybe Australia or some other country, because I'm sure there the gender issues would not really have been that severe the way they were in India, number one. And number two, what made you stick around and start your own venture? Because you virtually started the industrial enzymes business in India. You gave almost a new industry, the biotech sector. You gave birth to a new industry, and today it is considered to be one of the most future-proof and potential industries. So, what made you stay back?
Well, I'll be very honest. When I was turned down by all the breweries, I did accept a job overseas. Okay, because I thought that, okay, maybe it's easier to be a brewmaster out of India. And so I had accepted a job in the UK.
Yeah.
But there was an accidental encounter with a biotech entrepreneur from Ireland who talked me into starting up a biotech company in India. And I thought, well, if I have a choice between just going for a job in the UK and starting a company in India, maybe I should give it a shot. That sounded quite exciting. You know, I've always been someone who's been very proud to be an Indian, someone who wants to change a lot of things in India. And that's why I wanted to change the brewing scene in India, where I said, okay, if women can come into that sector, maybe that's a change. And I would wanted more technology to come into brewing, which is what I was very interested in doing. But okay, that was not to be. So when I got the opportunity to start my own biotech sector, my own biotech company based on fermentation science, I said, well, that's exciting. I can still do it in India and I can do something different.
That's true. But wasn't it scary, because the first step is always, full of anticipation, plus
Yeah.
you have to invest your capital, the entire rules and regulations mechanism that was present then, that point in time.
Well, I can tell you, Mihir, that in 1978, I call it foolish courage, because I had no money. I had 10,000 rupees in my bank. I had absolutely no collateral to offer, except this great idea of making industrial enzymes. I was a woman, I was 25 years old. I knew that I was high risk in every sense of the word, because banks didn't want to lend to me. People didn't want to work for a woman employer. And nobody understood what biotech was all about. So I had a lot of headwinds, I would say, against me.
Absolutely.
Saying that you're not doing the right and sensible thing. But nevertheless, I was very excited. I was very challenged. I found it very challenging. And I took it on as a challenge, because I knew that I had to prove to those who turned me down in the brewing industry that I could run a successful business. I could manage a business. So with that kind of a spirit of challenge and a sense of purpose, I started my company in a garage. And of course, I rented out a small shed in which I started the enzyme business. And it was very frugal, because as I told you, it was very difficult to access capital those days. There was no venture funding. It was all debt financing.
Correct.
And I managed to convince one banker that, I was doing something exciting. I managed to convince a few people that this was something exciting, and they were willing to join me in that journey. So I willy-nilly sort of managed to start this company under very, very challenging circumstances. But it was that spirit of, doing something and proving to the world that I can do it that kept me going.
But, once you started this venture, what would you consider as your biggest breakthrough, after which you never looked back? Because, every journey has its own challenges and hurdles. So if you were to...
I had many breakthroughs during my journey. I would say my first breakthrough was my first export out of India, was the first milestone. The second breakthrough was my ability, and that I think was a real breakthrough, because it was my ability to develop an indigenous fermentation technology for making enzymes and then scale it up to industrial scale. And it became one of the most successful technologies that we developed in Biocon. And we were making some of the most differentiated enzyme systems in the world, which became really sort of leaders in that segment, because we had uniqueness in those enzymes. These were fruit juice enzymes, pectinases, which I was marketing the world over, and where I found that I could compete with the best enzymes from other big multinational producers, and I could actually do better than them. That was my eureka moment, saying, yes, we can develop interesting technologies, differentiated technologies, very high value IP on top of that, which really gave me the courage then to keep investing in enzyme technologies. And another big breakthrough for me was when Unilever took over my partners in Ireland and became my partners and made me realize the kind of value I had created.
Correct.
And then of course they also helped me professionalize very rapidly because I had to conform to Unilever global standards. And that was another very important inflection point in Biocon's journey. And of course, as I started developing more and more sophisticated genetic engineering technologies for making enzymes, I then realized that I could do other things with that technology, and that's how I got into biopharmaceuticals.
Correct.
Saying, why am I only making enzymes? I should be doing something else even more lucrative than enzymes. And you know, I got the opportunity to look at biopharmaceuticals by leveraging all those technologies. And when I started looking at biopharmaceuticals, I started looking at unmet needs in India, which were really about insulin therapies for diabetics and cancer therapies for our patients based on novel biologics. So I think all that kind of helped me to develop a strategy that was very differentiated, addressing unmet needs. And that actually, when I look back on it, I think gave me the raison d'etre, the sense of purpose. Because even when I was developing enzymes, my sense of purpose was how do I replace polluting chemical technologies with green, eco-friendly enzyme technologies. So even before climate change was fashionable, that became my problem-solving approach.
Correct.
And I always tell entrepreneurs that when you identify problems and when you have that urge and earnestness to solve that problem, that's a great way to start a company.
You know, at this point, I want to know your view on one fact that like your industry, the entire biotech industry or the software industry, IT industry, all this, you know, they started in India. It created a new wave of revolution, I would say. Has it really received, after so many years of reforms and independence, has it really, I mean, sectors like these, have they received the due recognition and importance from government in terms of, you know, future skilling your next generation and creating enough opportunities for them?
I think the IT sector has done very well because we are a global brand today, and the government has recognized that and actually given them a lot of SOPs. And I think NASSCOM has done a fabulous job of addressing many of these talent needs and skills and what skill development needs and what have you, and they've worked very closely with the government to do much of this. But when it comes to biotech and life tech in general, I think it has fallen way short because of the size of the sector. See, first and foremost, the big difference between IT and biotech is that biotech and life tech is very gestational. It is very it has very high regulatory control to begin with, unlike IT. Okay, so when you look at the fact that taking an idea to the market in an IT sort of sector is less than a year, and taking an idea to the market in biotech is at least 3 to 5 years, and in many cases 10 years, therein lies the problem. So you need a lot of gestational capital which nobody provides. And then companies struggle to endure and scale up. So they start with a lot of enthusiasm, a great idea which they want to now build on, but they find very quickly that they run out of capital, and then you stunt their growth. So it remains very small. And that, I think, has been the biggest bane of biotechnology in India. I know I endured. And I know that I was fortunate enough to basically get a lot of help from my partners, and I had great partners. I had Unilever, I had my Irish partners in the beginning. They helped me to access global markets. And that's why I grew so fast. And I was able to endure and grow and plow back all my profits into the business and grow even further. And But when I look at some of the startups that I see today in biotech, why is it that they still haven't got to that scale? I know many of them are very good ideas, very interesting companies, but they've remained stunted. They haven't scaled up to global scale. The reason is because there's no access to gestational capital. I'll be very honest.
True.
See, if you were to tell a VC that you will have a 20-year tax holiday if you invest in biotech, I'm sure you will get a lot of interest.
That's true.
But if you don't allow biotech VCs any differential terms compared to investing in pure play tech, why will they invest in biotech? They'd rather go into a much lower risk, lower gestational kind of sector, which is IT.
Which is IT. How did it feel when you entered into world's 100 most powerful women club? Did you ever think that you will enter in that club?
You know, I'll be very honest. Whatever I've done during my life, I've done it because I believe in it. Now, if that has gained me recognition, obviously it's great. And of course, I'm very humbled and honored that I'm in all these lists. But it also tells me that, you know, women can be recognized if they really start differentiating and if they really start building credible businesses or doing anything very, very credible. So yes, I am in that list of 100 most powerful business women in the world, and it makes me very proud that there are very few women from India on that list, and I'm one of them. So that is certainly something which I'm humbled by. But I really want to make sure that we get many more women from India on that particular list. And I think we need to see more successful entrepreneurial businesses being run by women.
That's true. No, I agree with that. Who would you call your biggest inspiration?
You know, I'm always inspired by people who do things differently. And so I've had a large number of people who've inspired me, right from academia, where I think Professor Mashelkar inspired me a lot, because he was the first person who said we must bring in patent literacy into our research. And so I used to brainstorm with him a lot. Of course, Mr. Vagul brought in venture capital into the country, and he and I used to talk a lot about venture funding and starting up this whole entrepreneurial ecosystem. He's always impressed me in many ways. His brother Bala Manian, who's an amazing inventor, always inspires me by new ideas that he comes up with to solve many of the sort of medical and bioscience problems. He is an amazing person who keeps on inspiring me. Dr. Devi Shetty, of course, inspires me by the way he has built this affordable healthcare model, and that's why I partnered him in cancer. I, of course, get inspired by all these great IT icons that we have in the country, whether it's Azim Premji, of course, he also inspires me by his philanthropy, but people like Narayan Murthy and many others who have built these very successful IT companies and created a global brand for India based on IT is also very inspirational. I also want to mention here that another sector that has not got its due recognition is the pharma sector. I think India's pharma sector is a great sector. You know, we are playing a huge role in global healthcare. The generics industry that India is famous for has actually made a huge impact on global healthcare with its low-cost generics. I think we need to recognize this sector a lot more. It, according to me, is one of the best made in India, make in India stories for the world.
That's true.
And I think it needs to be supported much more.
What would you consider as your biggest challenge that you have faced so far in your journey?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with credibility. But I faced huge credibility challenges because mostly people said, trying to do it out of India is going to be tough. So I've had to create a separate company in Boston now to give me that credibility. I've had to license some of my novel assets to US companies to give me that credibility. And I also realized why India is not that credible, because we don't have a very strong clinical research culture. in India.
That's
You know, our hospitals are very focused on clinical practice but not on clinical research. I think ICMR has not, really focused on mandating clinical research as a necessity for this country. We spend very little on clinical research if you think about it, and so on and so forth. And yet this is a country that is a natural place to do clinical research because of the disease burden, because of the patient numbers that we have. And think of the things, and now with the combination of IT, you can do so much. You can do patient stratification, you can do so much of data stratification on disease basis, on patient basis, on ethnic basis. You can do so much, but we are doing nothing of that. We have never even tried to develop national repositories or registries in a very cohesive way. Yes, suddenly you will find that yes, there's a national cancer grid that is being formed, but then if you look at the data that's been captured, it's not enough.
Correct.
You look at any medical data that is being captured, it's inadequate because you're missing out important aspects of that medical data. So I think, we are a country that just does what it needs to, but it doesn't do what can be considered as a value add. So I think that value added, ethos and thought process must come in.
Right.
And then we can really surge ahead. Because there's so much value to be created with just our natural resources and our natural advantages.
If there was one thing which you could change about your life, what would that be?
I'm not sure I want to change anything about my life because I've enjoyed my journey so far. I'm a person who, just gets stronger with every setback. So I've had many setbacks and failures in my life. And I wouldn't say that just because I had that failure and setback, I would like to change that. I don't think I want to change those failures and setbacks because every time I have a failure, every time I have a setback, the moment I overcome that failure or that setback, I become stronger. So that's been my life's learning, that I tell people, don't worry about a setback or a failure because that's temporary.
I'm sure there are a lot of youngsters who are aspiring to, achieve success like you, who might be watching this show at this point. What would be your message to them?
First and foremost, identify a problem that really worries you or disturbs you, and try and solve that problem because therein lies that opportunity to create a business out of that problem.
That's true.
The second thing is, remember, you must endure with trying to solve that problem. Don't give up at the first obstacle or at the first setback because you've got to solve that problem. That is your sense of purpose because the day you solve that problem, you'll be very successful. The third thing is self-belief that I can do it, And the fourth is get a good team of people to help you do it.
Right.
Because if you can share that idea and get people to be as excited about solving that problem or creating that business, that's what makes you successful. You cannot do it alone. I mean, I am not successful because I did everything myself. I mean, this interview sounds like I did everything myself, but no. I have 10,000 fantastic people working in this organization. They are the ones who have actually helped me to get this company to where it is. They are the talent. They are the cogs that turn our wheels. And without them, this wheel would not turn at all.
That's true.
So I think you must understand that I might have the steering wheel, but if I don't have the wheels and the gears and the cogs that turn those wheels, I just wouldn't be able to move that engine.
That's true. I think that's the key point, that you create a team of.
So my real advice to young entrepreneurs is get that team together fast, because I only could do it when I got that team together. My founding team is what helped me to start succeeding. And if I didn't have a team of like-minded people who are so passionate as I was about building this company and this business, I could have never succeeded.
That's really inspirational. Thank you so much for joining us, and wish you many more successes ahead. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.